Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackmine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers 0-2 in the last 2 weeks. They fall to 3-2 with a 20-17 loss to the Dallas Cowboys, a game that brought so much with it. And if you were fan enough to stay up and say, screw it, my Monday is over, doesn't matter, I'm dealing with the delay, I'm sticking this one out until 1 a.m., good for you. But a terrible finish and probably a tough time going to sleep after that one. The Pittsburgh Steelers have plenty to fix. We're going to dive into where their biggest concerns are and some massive decisions that they have to make this week, including the quarterback situation, how they approach the offense differently, and maybe some changes on defense. Plus, is George Pickens in the doghouse? That's the question surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, and there's evidence to say maybe he is. But again, we've been here before with George Pickens, and it seems to be a recurring theme. We'll dive into that. Plus, we'll take all your questions. Nick, it's a good one here in the Berg today. It stinks. It feels like the weather was supposed to be a victory Monday. It's not. I mean, we toughed it out last night. Last night was it was a tough one. Shout out to everybody who stood in those stands and drank some beers and got rained on. How are you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling all right. I mean, obviously not a lot of sleep, but I think everybody that is on this live stream didn't get a lot of sleep because I know only the diehards watch All Steelers Talk. So, I mean, listen, we're used to that. It happens. And personally, the Penguins go on a West Coast road trip in a couple weeks. So it's like the preseason for me because they got 3 10 o'clock starts coming up in a week. So you got to get used to it. But it was not an easy slog, especially early in that game throughout the second quarter where the game was not looking pretty, I should say, on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, no, it was definitely one where at times you were going, okay, this could end anytime now. It would be really nice. The rain was nuts. Nobody over exaggerated how crazy that rain was. The lightning was nuts. And then just like that, it disappeared, which I'm glad that it did. I'm glad that we got out at 9:45. Game ended about 1 o'clock. Thought they were going to cut ads and give us a quick game after 11. Didn't happen. That being said, the Pittsburgh Steelers fall to the Dallas Cowboys on a last-second touchdown pass from Dak Prescott to Robert Torben. Not Robert Torben, but whoever. Did you see Tyler Smith, the offensive lineman for the Dallas Cowboys, reaction after the game? Because it's a good one.
The cornerback?
No.
The offensive lineman. No, I missed
the offensive lineman. Tyler Smith goes, man, TB sprained his nuts the play before. That's a dog right there. And I said that's an all-time reaction. That is an all-time reaction to, I mean, a great play. You got to give it to the Dallas Cowboys sometimes. And you go back and you watch that play. Deshaun Elliott plays great coverage that entire snap, that entire rep. Sometimes it's just a good catch and a good ball, and that seemed to be what went on in that one between Deshaun Elliott and the rest of the defense. That being said, 20-17, 0-2 in the last 2 weeks, falls to the Indianapolis Colts, and now the Dallas Cowboys. There are major decisions to be made. We'll dive into those in a second, but first you got to address what needs to be fixed. What can the Pittsburgh Steelers do between now and next Sunday to secure a win against the Las Vegas Raiders? And don't get me wrong, the Raiders are a much easier opponent than both Indianapolis with the new fresh Joe Flacco and the Dallas Cowboys, who are riding the roller coaster just as much as the Pittsburgh Steelers are. But you have to make some changes. You have to make some adjustments. In your eyes, what was the biggest need? What stands out to you to say, hey, you got to change this one before week 6?
The Dallas Cowboys came into this game with one of the worst rushing offenses and rushing defenses in the NFL. And they were great on the rush, and they were great at stopping the rush. So, again, it's not anything where the Steelers, I mean, there's a lot that went wrong in this game, but I think the biggest thing was the Steelers lost the line of scrimmage. And that is something that coming into the year, they said that was going to be their identity. I know the question was asked last night to Justin Fields, what is this team's identity? And he kind of skirted around the question, but the identity was, I mean, you hired Arthur Smith. Mike Tomlin is your head coach. The identity was bully football. It was a return to Steelers football of old. That's what they build this as. And last night, that's not Steelers football of old. That is Steelers football that the old players are going to look at and say, that isn't us. Like, don't associate that with us in any way, shape, or form. They lost the line of scrimmage badly to a team in which they probably should have dominated. So that's the biggest thing they needed to fix, because you look at the offensive line last night, that's as good as it's going to get. That's as healthy as it's going to get. That is your fully healthy offensive line for the rest of the regular season. You need to man up and you need to be better in the trenches. And if you're not, teams are going to push you around like the Cowboys did last night.
Yeah, I agree. And when it comes to losing the line of scrimmage, the Pittsburgh Steelers have seemingly lost it. But the problem is that they're not trying to fix it. There just seems to be no adjustments, nothing made to say, how do we win this back? How do we go back to where we were? It's almost as if Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith on the offensive side of the ball are just trying to ride the roller coaster and say, eventually it'll come back around. Eventually Najee Harris will be able to do this. Eventually we'll get Jaylen Warren back or Cordero Patterson back, and we'll be able to have that change of pace back that maybe picks up the slack. But Najee finishes last night, I believe, 14 for 42 yards. He averages 3 yards a rush. And you're sitting around watching them throw pitches to him where you shouldn't throw pitches to Najee Harris ever. And when it runs up the middle, nothing's there. It almost never works. What does work is getting him an open space on passes. And the Steelers, for the most part, decided, yeah, we're going to get away from that, and we're just going to try to pound the rock. It's just not the way to go about it right now. You lost your identity. Go find it, but go find it in better ways. Just, you know what they say, doing the same thing over and over again is nothing short of insanity. And that's what it seems like it is watching the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. Is Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith are saying, well, if we just keep doing the same things, eventually they will work. They're not. That was Matt Canada's offense for 3 years. And for 3 years, we heard the same things. If we just keep doing it, it's going to work. It's not. That's not how the NFL is. If you adjust and make it better, then it's going to work. And on the defensive side of the ball, I don't know what it is last 2 weeks. I don't know if it's Larry Ogunjobi banged up. I don't know if it's the loss of Alex Highsmith, which it could be the loss of Alex Highsmith. That's a great player to have in the run game. I don't know if it's just Patrick Queen not living up to the hype that he wanted to live up to. I have no idea. But the defensive side of the ball has been such a letdown. And you give up 20 points, you should still expect to win that ball game. You're not going to every single time. But how they gave up 20 points and how their inability to stop anybody when they needed to stop them was just not Pittsburgh Steelers-esque. It was, this team is banged up maybe and missing one key part, and because of that, they can't overcome almost anything. It just seems like there's no spark, no firepower right now, and they desperately need spark and fire. I mean, that's why they pay Minka. That's why they pay Cam. That's why they pay TJ. That's why they went out and got a Deshaun Elliott. And that's why they went out and got Keanu Benton and Joey Porter Jr. And there's just nothing there. There's no spark on either side of the football for the Pittsburgh Steelers to kind of latch onto.
Well, I'll say this. The defense had spark because it flashed and was gone, right? It was the defense of the Killer Bees era. That's what we saw last night. They had to be on the field because the Steelers offense wasn't doing much. They gave up copious amounts of yardage, but they'd make the big play, the strip sack, the blocked field goal, the Joey Porter and the Dante Jackson interceptions. They would make that play. They would bring that spark. They would make the play that needed to be made at the very last second, but they were getting caved in every other moment of the game. And at the end of the game, you see that first and goal from the 1, they almost made a huge, stand there. And if they would have, we'd be having a completely different conversation. I think this team still showed, even if they won that game, even if on 4th down that ball falls short or the ball, gets bobbled or anything like that, I think you're still talking about a very flawed team. But as Mike Tomlin says, it's always nicer to try to fix those flaws with a win. They just haven't been able to do it the last 2 weeks. And I think part of it is also, I mean, we talk about Tomlin. That was not a well-coached team last night. You can say it was a poorly coached game, but I think more so, that's not a well-coached team. The amount of false start penalties, the amount of mental errors that they made, how many years are we going to watch this team make these similar mistakes and not say, all right, the head coach is just not getting these guys ready to play the football game.
Yeah, that was one of my 2 adjustments that the Pittsburgh Steelers need to make. And honestly, the second one that I'll get into here in a minute, you can't make. But when it comes to the coaching is atrocious right now. Across the board, the coaching is atrocious. You want to talk about slow starts. Mike Tomlin continues to say, yeah, well, it's slow starts. They don't decide football games. I mean, you don't start slow in either of these 2 losses, you win the football game. And I tend to disagree. And I think most across the league would tend to disagree, because when you ask players, hey, what do you need to do? Hey, we just got to get off to a better start. We got to stop kicking ourselves in the butt early. That's where the Pittsburgh Steelers are. Tomlin, for the last, 5 years maybe, has been a guy that we have constantly talked about all these penalties, all these mental errors, what's going on. And I just can't pinpoint where it comes from. Does it come from just lack of detail in practice? Does it come from the Pittsburgh Steelers just having guys who are not mentally strong enough to play at the NFL level on a consistent basis? I have no idea, but it's so frequent. That's not the players at this point. That is the coaching staff. You do something to have a disciplined team. If the Steelers have a disciplined team right now, they're 5-0. I mean, plain and simple. If the Pittsburgh Steelers do not kick themselves in the butt constantly over and over and over again, they're 5-0. And there's almost no questions there. I mean, the Steelers went 3-12, 3 out of 12, I believe, last night on third down. And most of those came because they were 3-10, 3-12 because of penalties on second down or the original third down. Mm-hmm. That's never going to work. You're never going to. And you saw the success early in the season when it came to not having those penalties. I agree with you. I think at some point we have been putting the blame on Mike Tomlin. We should continue to put the blame on Mike Tomlin. I think to some degree he's got to acknowledge, and that's where I come in, is maybe you have to take a step back. Maybe if you're Mike Tomlin, you have to just let your coaches coach and stop trying to coach everybody because it's not working, or your coaches are just that bad. And that could be the case too. Maybe your coaches are just that bad. And then there's Arthur Smith on the other side of that, who, I mean, the last 2 games has been so bad. I don't know what's going on. We're going to dive into George Pickens here in a little while. They're just questions. They're just questions that I don't think we'll have answers to. And it's honestly, last night was like watching Matt Canada, a different offense, but it was watching, hey, we were really bad last week, so we're just going to do the same thing this week. And we're just going to do it more and see if it works. And it's not going to work, but we're going to like add in one little flair, like Justin Fields taking powers outside or something. Like, it just doesn't, it doesn't, none of it made sense to me. None of it made sense to me. On the defensive side of the ball, my change, because one of them was coaching, but the other one, man, dude, they got to hope Cam Sutton comes back quick. They got to hope week 8 could get here before everything gets real bad, because, I mean, that game, again, there are a billion reasons you lost, but the Pittsburgh Steelers and where Beanie Bishop currently stands, last night was as bad as it gets. Last night was a guy who had no idea what he was doing on that field, was lost 90% of the time, and found himself matched up. He's lined up against CD Lamb on 4th and 1. And I'm sitting there going, how did that happen? And it wasn't supposed to happen, but that's just how it played out. You can't have that. They got to hope Cam Sutton comes back and is ready to rock, and everybody talking about Cam Sutton's washed. No, this is a prime example. The Pittsburgh Steelers need Cam Sutton back. I don't think I'm putting Beanie Bishop out on the field in week 6. I like Beanie. I'm not cutting Beanie. I'm not even thinking about cutting. But if we want to pinpoint, hey, where was the biggest issue on both sides of the football, the biggest loss, the biggest L that a player took last night, I think, was Beanie Bishop.
Yeah, undoubtedly. I tweeted out yesterday, this is a game that Beanie's going to want to forget quickly, because Dak Prescott had him circled in highlighter going out throughout the entire week. You could tell that was the plan, was, hey, this is the guy that we're going to expose, whether that's CD Lamb in the slot, whether that's Ferguson coming out of the tight end spot, or really any of the speed guys that they had. The Steelers had trouble with all of the speedy receivers that the Dallas Cowboys threw at him, but Beanie Bishop especially, he couldn't really... He couldn't tread water, and that was the worst part, because the first 4 weeks of the season, he had made some bad plays. He had some issues, but you could always tell that he could tread the water. Last night, he was sinking, and it was a very, very eye-opening performance from him that, man, if a good quarterback is in here and executes the way he wants, Beanie Bishop has no chance right now.
That was exactly my point, is once you face a good quarterback, and the Steelers have not faced a healthy good quarterback before Dak Prescott. Once you face a good quarterback, it's over. Like, you are not going to be able to defend, because Beanie is not ready to play at the NFL level. And again, I'm not cutting Beanie. I'm not moving on from Beanie. Nothing. It's just plain. You're an undrafted free agent who's trying to play CD Lamb. That's not going to work. Like, it's not supposed to work. That's not how the NFL is built. And Dak Prescott last night said, hey, you want to beat the Steelers defense? Just throw it to whoever Beanie Bishop is covering or supposed to cover, because they're going to be wide open while he's lost. The Steelers need to figure that out. I don't think they're going to until week 8 or week 10, unfortunately. But man, they better hope Cam Sutton comes back here and is 100%. And to be honest, I'm probably testing the waters with CJ Henderson. I'm definitely testing the waters with Thomas Graham just to see what you got in that kid, because I don't think you could put Beanie Bishop out there. If you could just avoid the mental mistakes, you're less of the problem. But right now, you are the biggest part of the problem on defense, especially when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Shout out Vibing with Dogs. Here's what they need to do: average more than 3 yards a carry, throw the ball to the open man and call a good game and stop playing zone defense, which is a good way to lead into Justin Fields. I didn't think Justin Fields' performance last night was all too great. I thought it was his worst of the 5 games that he had out there. Part of that was probably George Pickens was almost completely eliminated from the game plan by the Pittsburgh Steelers, which we will dive into here in a couple of minutes. But I don't think he played well. That being said, and I'm going to ask if he's going to get benched for Russell Wilson. Everybody wanted to say last week you couldn't put the ball in his hands and go win the game. Yesterday, you put the ball in his hands and he went and he won the game, and then the defense lost it. That's what happened last night. And I don't think the win would have been 100% on Justin. And I don't think the offense is playing to Justin's skill sets necessarily right now. And I think the offensive line is killing him. And I think not having wide receivers is killing him. But at the same time, you missed a wide open Najee Harris that would have walked into the end zone. You got to think, how many more times did he miss a wide open wide receiver last night? And it just kind of felt like last night was another example of the flaws. The flaws are coming out a little bit at a time. I don't think I'm turning the page on Justin Fields, but his performance last night, in my eyes, not super great. So I'll ask you, you heard the sideline reporter, Melissa Sparks, I believe. I apologize. Starks, excuse me. Say that Russell Wilson should be ready to go by week 6. He was ramping up the practice participation this past week. Mike Tomlin said that, you never know what's going to happen, and they still haven't named a long-term starter. The plan has always been Russell Wilson. Is it going to be Russell Wilson in week 6? Have the Pittsburgh Steelers given up on Justin Fields?
I don't think they should. I don't. I think one of the biggest things in all of sports is the bounce back opportunity, specifically for starting quarterbacks in the National Football League. And I think while Justin did not have a good game, I'm not going to go out there and try to sugarcoat it. He wasn't good. He was also not helped out very much. I mean, you mentioned the wide receivers, you mentioned the offensive line. We talked about the coaching. I think that he had a lot going against him, and I don't think that you can dock him for that. I think that going into week 6, you need to give him that opportunity to bounce back. And if he can't get the bounce back, then you put in Russ that following week. But I think you do have to give him the chance for a bounce back, because it is back-to-back losses. But we talked about that Indianapolis loss where Justin was one of the only reasons they were in that game. Not the only one, but one of the only reasons they were still in that game because of his performance. And then last night, it was a wholesale, clown show by the Steelers. I was trying to say it in the cleanest way possible, but that's what it was for the Steelers. You can't just take Justin out and say, all right, everything's going to be better, because I understand that a lot of people want to see Russell Wilson, but Russell Wilson going in there and doesn't fix the play calling. It doesn't fix the offensive line, and it doesn't fix the fact that the receivers, for the most part, can't get open. So as much as I know people are going to be talking about this being the storyline this week, is Russ going to get the opportunity? I think you need to give your young quarterback an opportunity to bounce back and show that, hey, I could be mentally tough enough to have that type of performance on national television and come back and play a big game on the road.
I agree with you. I agree that they should give him that opportunity. There is a very small part of me that thinks that they will. Almost no part of me that thinks that they will. We could sit here and try to be Mike Tomlin all we want, but at the end of the day, he makes those decisions. We don't. I agree. I don't think Justin did anything last night where you're saying that was on him completely. He is the biggest issue. I mean, if you're going to start benching people who aren't producing, you should bench Najee Harris. You should bench almost the entire offensive line. You should probably bench the coaching staff. Beanie Bishop should take a seat. Patrick Queen should probably take a seat. You're looking at a lot of names out there that are not playing, the entire wide receiving core, George Pickens included, if we're going to be honest, because he came up with some passes, but he also dropped a wide open pass for the second week in a row, which is not, I mean, you're going to wear eye black that says always open, and then you're going to drop balls. That's not how that works. I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to give Justin another shot. I think this is a Russell Wilson week. We are 0-2 the last 2 games. We are teetering the verge of this being a letdown and this being an issue, and we can't teeter that line anymore. And in Mike Tomlin's eyes, this was always Russell Wilson. It was supposed to be Russell Wilson from the start. It was supposed to be Russell Wilson all summer. It was supposed to be Russell Wilson all season. He has done everything in his power to leave that window open for Russell Wilson. And last week it was like, okay, look, Justin is doing enough where you kind of feel good. And again, I think if you rock with Justin, the long-term positive is much better than the right now negative. And I don't think that you're going to fix everything by putting Russell Wilson in. In fact, I think it gets worse. I do think it gets worse. I think that Russell Wilson isn't going to be able to be as mobile as Justin Fields is, and that offensive line is going to kill him. I don't think that Russell Wilson is going to be able to add himself to the run game the way that Justin Fields can, and therefore you're going to look at this and you're going to find out that when Najee Harris is rushing for 2-3 yards a carry, you have no other option to pick up some yards on the ground. It's just average 2-3 yards a carry. This is going to become a pass-heavy offense, and it's going to fail. That's my thoughts on this. I just don't think the surrounding situation is good for anybody right now. I think that you stick with Justin and you try to work him out and see if it works. I think when you bench him, it kills his confidence. Like I think that you bench Justin Fields unless he somehow goes back into the game before the end of the season. His time in Pittsburgh is likely over. Like, that's the end of it. I have a hard time sitting here and saying that you're going to bench the guy after 2 losses and he's going to have the confidence that you're not going to bench him next year. That doesn't feel like the situation that's going to work out for the Steelers. But I don't think Russ is the answer. That being said, the Steelers are probably going to look at it and say Russ is the answer. And I would imagine Tuesday comes and Mike Tomlin says Russ is back, and we'll open the door for a competition and we'll see what happens. And in other words, that's going to mean Russ is going to be the guy as long as he's full go. But I mean, after this long, you got to be somewhat full go. You got to test the water somehow. And then they'll go to Vegas. Vegas stinks and they'll look good against Vegas. And then it'll be Russ's job.
Yeah. The only thing about Vegas, I'll say, and I know we have a long week ahead of us where we're going to talk about Vegas. They might have that new quarterback bump next week. No matter who the quarterback is, you might get that new quarterback bump. But at the same time, if the Steelers do what you're saying, they might also have the new quarterback bump. So that could be the makings of a very interesting matchup on Sunday in Vegas.
Yeah, look, I'm all about the bump. I don't think Aiden O'Connell's giving you the bump. Can you get the bump after like being the bump and then getting benched? And then could you get the bump two seasons in a row? Could you be that bump after proving not to be the bump?
How much the offense believes in you. If the offense really likes Aiden O'Connell, says, you know what, let's do it again. Because Aiden O'Connell wasn't great last year, but they put together some wins down the stretch with Antonio Pierce and Aiden O'Connell. So maybe, he gets back in there and they fit back into a groove. But we're not here to talk about the Raiders. I understand that. So I'll stop with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we're getting the bump, but I do think that the Steelers, you lose 3 in a row. Mike Tomlin's on the hot seat. Everybody's talking about how this team is going down the tube and it's over and blah, blah, blah. We'll see. But if I had to go guess how Mike Tomlin approaches the quarterback situation tomorrow, it's Russell Wilson is back, is healthy. We're going to open the door for competition. We're going to see what happens. And in other words, Russ is going to be the starter. And maybe Russ is good. To be honest with you, I think if Russ goes out there and he stinks and you got to go back to Justin, you are in complete hell for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I also think you're going to get a rejuvenated Justin and an offense that says, screw it, we just got to see what happens. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I personally think that if you ran an offense the way that you were supposed to run it for Russ, maybe it works better because the one you're trying to run for Justin stinks. And it's just not. It's not working out. All right. Let's dive into George Pickens here in a second. Is he in the doghouse? I think there's a sense that he is, and there's explanations to what the hell is going on between him and the Pittsburgh Steelers. But first, we got a word from our boys over at BetterHelp. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's something that scares you? For me, it's the obvious ones. Death, loss, failure. Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us. But what about those fears that don't involve zombies and ghosts? Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears while finding ways to overcome them. Because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. I'm somebody who's benefited from therapy for a long time, and I've been an advocate for therapy for years, and I'm excited to tell you guys about BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/allsteelers today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/allsteelers. Shout out our boys over at BetterHelp. Let's talk some George Pickens, because we could talk about the hypothetical of Justin Fields and Russell Wilson and what it means for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But there's a bigger hypothetical, a bigger question mark, a bigger what if in this situation, and that is, what the hell is going on with George Pickens? He was outsnapped yesterday by not just Van Jefferson, but Calvin Austin. Finished the game with 3 receptions for 26 yards. He had 7 targets, which is the most amongst receivers, but some of them weren't accurate. One of them was a drop. One of them, I mean, you're talking that crossing route that people want to say, and Mark Caboli looked right at me and said, that was a bad throw. I said, no, George Pickens stopped running on that throw. He jogged the entire time. Mike Tomlin, after the game, is asked about the situation and goes, quote, "We just wanted to minimize his reps in an effort to get more productivity. We're just trying to rep manage in terms of the totality of the big picture. He wasn't less of a focal point in terms of our intentions of what we wanted to do offensively." Nick, I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I'll toss it to you first. Do you believe Mike Tomlin at all? And if you do, please explain to me why and where the logic comes from to rep manage, to snap count manage a 23-year-old playing wide receiver, not running back, not defensive line, not anything else, playing wide receiver in his 3rd NFL season, just 5 games into the year.
I know the NBA doesn't start for another week or 2, but the load management excuse is not one I thought I'd ever hear from a head coach in the National Football League. I mean, you want quality over quantity with your number 1 wide receiver. I don't think any head coach has ever said that ever, because whenever you have a number 1 receiver, you want quality and quantity. And that's what you should get out of George Pickens. And I understand he had 7 targets. He led the team in targets, but a lot of those were just, all right, Justin's just going to throw it up to him. He's going to run a 9. It was a lot of what we saw last year from George Pickens. It was a lot of what we saw under Matt Canada for George Pickens. It didn't seem like they were scheming anything up to get him open, to get him into space. So as far as they were trying to get better quality out of his opportunities, you could say that that was a bold-faced lie by watching the game. I mean, there was no quality looks that were given to George Pickens, but at the same time, you shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
No. You definitely should. And look, if he's in the doghouse, if there's issues going on within that organization and him, I get it, but that means there are no more excuses. There's no more wiggle room. You've now lost 2 in a row, and your best offensive weapon is sitting on the bench. So you got to make a move. If you don't want him here, you get rid of him and you go get somebody else. And there are options. We've been talking about an option for a week now, and I'm not advocating to trade George Pickens. I think that's wild. But if George Pickens is an issue, and an issue enough where the Pittsburgh Steelers have an issue with him, you got to make a move. You don't have time to waste. The worst thing you can do is keep your guy, your number 1 wide receiver, on the bench so that Van Jefferson and company can lead the way as a wide receiver core and do nothing productive in the meantime. There were instances. I mean, George Pickens spent 8 minutes and 32 seconds. I counted. I watched the entire drive. 8 minutes and 32 seconds of a game clock. That's not just 8 minutes and 32 seconds of a game clock. He sat by himself on the bench, not talking to anybody. Meanwhile, Coach Azzani is talking to Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin. George Pickens is walking around. The offense is doing their thing. Justin Fields is walking around. George Pickens is sitting there by himself. And you got to think, what is going on? And then he gets out-repped by everybody on, a crucial drive. The game-winning, the game-leading drive by the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. in zero worlds does it make sense for Brandon Johnson to be on the field while George Pickens is on the bench on a crucial second down. What are we doing here? There has to be an issue. I don't know what that issue is. Maybe it's George losing his temper last week and Broderick Jones having to calm him down. Maybe it's him ripping the Cowboys defender's face mask and nobody catching that when they definitely should have caught that. Maybe it's just the way he's going about things. Maybe there are issues internally. I have no idea. But for Mike Tomlin to say this is just a rep count, we are just focusing on keeping him limited to load manage, makes no sense and is not the truth. Like, let's be honest. It's not the truth. Mike Tomlin lies to us all the time. That's what he does. These press conferences are half the truth. Do you ever watch Inventing Anna, the movie Inventing Anna?
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning of every episode, it says this entire story is true except for the parts that are completely made up. And that is a Mike Tomlin press conference. He's going to give you something, but he's also going to lie through his teeth for who knows? Could be all of it, could be none of it, could be somewhere in the middle. There is zero chance George Pickens is on a real snap count, and there is a very likely chance that he's in the doghouse. And again, if he is, you move on, and you move on now. You don't wait. You don't try to figure this out. This is 2 years of issues. This is where we sit right now. The Pittsburgh Steelers already need a wide receiver. If your options are keep George Pickens on the bench or go get one, maybe two of them, you go get them. And I'm sorry, but I just don't think they have time to wait where we sit right now.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, do you want to try to fix somebody's attitude, or do you want to try to win football games? And that's what it comes down to. Like George, we could have the conversation all day that George might have made everybody upset at him. He might have pissed some people off, whatever. You're trying to win football games. You got to put your best player out on the field. And guess what? In that last drive, I understand Brandon Johnson was out there over him on one play. What was the biggest play of that drive? A 20-yard pass to George Pickens, where he also got a unnecessary roughness call that set them up at the 7-yard line. At the end of the day, even if he is not your favorite person, he is your best weapon on offense at the moment, and you do have to utilize him. So we can have that discussion about his attitude and should the Steelers replace him. But as of right now, what you have at your disposal, he is your best weapon. You need to utilize him and utilize him correctly. If you don't, you're going to lose more football games. And at that point, we have to put an even bigger microscope on the coaching, because that is an atrocious decision there by all parties involved.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, that is such a good point. If this is a real logical decision by Mike Tomlin and company, fire him tomorrow. You know what I mean? Don't let him pull a Matt Canada, tell him to come to Rooney's office, let Rooney fire him before he gets to his office tomorrow. Like, that's where we should be if that's a real situation. But it's not. Like, that's how blatantly obvious it is that it's not. And we'll see what happens. I would imagine this is just the beginning, but it's going to boil over and it's going to get bad. And again, the Pittsburgh Steelers, man, they just can't seem to get anything going on their side when it comes to the mental side of things, the controlling your environment side of things. But at the same time, the biggest looming issue right now seems to be two of their top draft picks in Najee Harris and George Pickens. And you just got to wonder, how much cleaner mentally this team is. I know you're not going to get rid of penalties, but how much less distractions come when those two aren't around. And I think maybe the Steelers consider that where we sit currently. All right, let's dive into questions. I know we got a bunch of them. I know there's a ton to talk about, so I want to talk about all of it. If you have questions, make sure you're tossing them in the chat. We'll get to all of them before we head out of here. Let's kick it off. What do we got?
Let's start with Rick, who says, is Patrick Queen going to start doing something?
I hope so. Patrick Queen has not looked very good through 5 games. That being said, Patrick Queen is on a 1-year prove-it deal, essentially. There is almost no, if any, guaranteed money in the second and third year of his deals. So if he stinks this year, the Pittsburgh Steelers can move on. I mean, I hope that it's not just the defense and designed for inside linebackers to somehow fail. I don't know if I've ever experienced that situation where I've watched a defense and said this inside linebacker just this defense isn't designed for this inside linebacker to play well. But after so many names in a row failing, you got to wonder what's going on. I'm going to put the blame on Patrick Queen right now. He is not playing well. He needs to, and it needs to become a bit of an issue, a pressing issue for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, let's jump to vibing with the dogs, who was talking about Justin Fields says the kid needs a reset to settle him down.
Yeah, look, I don't agree with resets. I don't agree with benching guys to to kind of get them back on schedule. I just don't. I don't think that works in the NFL as often as it works in other places. And sometimes it does, but the long-term effects are there and they're negative most of the time. Just that's just the situation we're in. He does need a reset, but to be honest, like he needs a running game. Imagine how much better Justin Fields is with a running game. We saw it the first 2 weeks of the season when you could run the football. Justin Fields is playing very well, and that's how the Steelers offense is designed. So yeah, maybe that's on Justin, but maybe that's on the Steelers offense to be designed to succeed through running the football and not succeeding, and now you're just all scrambled and have no idea where to go. Again, I could be wrong, but I'm not a reset guy in the NFL.
Let's go over to Red Hot Chili Peppers fan, who says Justin, the offensive players just didn't seem to connect.
Yeah, I look at this situation and say that they didn't seem to connect, but there were also times where you just saw the offense as a whole not connect. And I don't know, again, like I don't know if that's Justin. Why did you connect the first couple of weeks and now you're not connecting now? Why did you connect the second half of Indianapolis, but you're not connecting now? There's something there. Something doesn't make sense. You could put all the blame on Justin, and I get it. This is the NFL. That's what you do. You pick the quarterback and you say that's the issue. I do it all the time. That's what you do. I don't always believe that that's the issue. I think that sometimes it comes down to your play calling is really, really bad. And right now there is no running game and nobody wants to adjust to say the running game isn't working. How do we change things? And people will say, I heard this excuse last night. I'm not going to call out who said it, but I heard this excuse last night. They only run blitz Najee Harris. He's never going to be able to do anything. I watched the entire Baltimore Ravens game versus the Cincinnati Bengals, and they run blitzed the hell out of Derrick Henry, and that dude did everything he could to put that team on his back. I think good running backs, really good running backs, avoid that situation, and I just don't think Najee Harris is doing that right now.
Yeah, I will say one thing as far as connecting with his weapons. Part of that is also getting into a rhythm, which I don't think the play calling allowed for last night.
Yes.
Again, I think that's going to be a huge part for the Steelers going forward. Is you need to get into a rhythm. The offense last night was choppy, and it really never just kind of felt like it got off the ground.
Yeah, I agree. That's, when you're not starting fast, you have no flow. And when you have no flow, you're not going to build a flow. And when nothing changes, when you start slow and you continue to do the same game plan, don't expect different results.
Let's jump over to Rod's question. He says, for all of Justin's bad play, he still gave us the lead at the end. The defense couldn't stop a cold Cowboys offense, and they made them punt only once. Not good enough on the defensive side of the football.
No, not at all. Not even a little bit. And don't get me wrong, like you could pinpoint areas of this. Was the Beanie Bishop was a massive issue. He gave up play after play on crucial downs that you were just like, you knew this was going to happen. You knew this was going to be the moment where they threw it Beanie's way and he wasn't going to get it done. And don't get me wrong, I like Beanie. I think Beanie's got potential, but it's not where we stand currently. The rest of it, the run defense has to step up. This just seems to be a revolving door issue where it's the Steelers run defense should be great and it's not. I don't know how you fix it. I don't know who needs to change. I don't know what defensive scheme needs to look different. I couldn't tell you. And then to start in zone constantly is just like, why? What are we doing here? What are we even trying to do? Are you really that scared of CD Lamb and company that you just can't go to man the entire game? Doesn't make any sense to me. But that's the Steelers defense, man. It's been like this for years. They shoot themselves in the foot and then they make limited changes to fix it.
Let's go over to Barber, who says, I don't know what's going on with Tomlin. It feels like the same stuff, different year, starting to feel like another 9-8, 10-7 wild card loss. The offense looks horrific.
Yeah. I mean, it does look horrific, but the Pittsburgh Steelers got rid of their number 2 wide receiver. They've benched their number 1 wide receiver. Their star running back is playing like one of the worst running backs in football right now, and that could be his fault. That could be the offensive line fault. That could be the run blitz fault. I have no idea. Their offensive coordinator is atrocious the last 2 weeks. It's just there's everything and anything is going wrong, and then obviously Justin Fields is missing guys and playing rattled at times, and overall, this is it. This is exactly where the Pittsburgh Steelers should have been. This is where everybody thought they were going to be to start the season. You know, if you want to talk about who's, pretender, everybody was saying they're a pretender right now. Yeah, they look like a pretender. They look like a team that played nobody, won, and now they're playing people, and all their issues are being exposed, and they don't have the coaching staff good enough to adjust to it.
Let's jump over to Vibin with the Dogs, who says, should we trade George Pickens for Devontae Adams? Also, we don't have anybody better than Broderick Jones at right tackle. Also, they had the lead with 2 minutes left and the defense folded. I'm big anti-Justin, but he did score big time at the end.
Yeah, you got to give Justin credit for that one. Everybody's going to say Justin couldn't win that game. Justin did win that game, and the defense didn't. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a billion ways that you could have won the game before that. Justin didn't lose that game. When it comes to, I'll address Broderick first. Don't have anybody better than Broderick? No, you don't. And I don't know what's going on with Broderick, man. And we're at the point now where you got to start talking about Pat Meyer. You got to start talking about Arthur Smith. You got to start talking about Mike Tomlin. All three of them should be addressed. And I don't know where you go from here. That's Mike Tomlin's biggest issue, is he hires really bad assistant coaches. He's always hired really bad assistant coaches. Some of them are good. Eddie Faulkner is a good one. He's developed some guys. I'm not saying, Najee ran for 41 yards or something last night, and that's an Eddie Faulkner product. No, but Jaylen Warren is. Jaylen Warren's an Eddie Faulkner project. He's had some others in the years as well. I do think it's a massive issue when it comes to Mike Tomlin and hiring assistants. He's not good at it, and that should be a flaw of his. It has always been a flaw of his. When it comes to Pickens for Devontae Adams, yeah, I'm kind of on board. Where we sit right now, if you're going to bench, if your options are to keep George Pickens on the bench to teach him a lesson or whatever's going on here, he's clearly not going to learn that lesson. He's never learned that lesson. He's always been a constant revolving door of issues. If you're done with them, move on. Go get a wide receiver that you could deal with. Go get a wide receiver that you're going to look to adjust and make part of the game plan and so on and so forth. Just move on. Pull the Band-Aid off, figure it out, and go from there. It's much better than sitting around with a guy that you cannot trust to keep on the field in crucial moments to come up with big plays when you need him to come up with big plays. You got to have somebody there who can, and if that's Devontae Adams, sure. You could probably give him George Pickens for Devontae Adams and get something else in return because George Pickens is a superstar.
Let's go over to two comments here, one by Barber and one by Steven, who say, one, it feels like this is Matt Canada all over again. And then Steven says, did Canada dress up like Arthur Smith for Halloween?
Yeah, it does seem like that. It's a different looking offense with the same lack of adjustments the last 2 weeks. That's what we're doing. And last week you look at it and just say, yeah, they had to throw the football. They came back. They put the ball in Justin Fields' hands. It took them like half of the third quarter to start doing that. You're 3 quarters through the third, and Arthur Smith goes, you want to know what we should stop doing? Running the football. It's not working, and maybe we should adjust and do something different. The lack of adjustments are wild. Is it Arthur Smith? I don't know. Arthur Smith has had good offenses before. Mike Tomlin's had a lot of bad offenses before. Maybe it's Mike Tomlin. I'm just I'm spectating here. I'm just tossing this out there, but I don't know. I don't know who the issue is, but it looks like the same situation that they've been in for years now. And there's only one constant, and that constant is Mike Tomlin.
Let's go over to Bert Butler, who said, that was the worst birthday present ever. What do we do to stop getting killed in the passing game? We keep giving up these 20-plus yard plays over and over again.
Stop playing zone defense, for one. Get Beanie Bishop off the field, which I don't think you fix that issue until Cam Sutton comes back, but that's 2. I think that's it, man. I think that's it. These guys hold up in man. They're very good in man coverage. I don't know why Mike Tomlin is such a zone-heavy guy. He wants to play zone defense. He thinks zone defense works. Maybe that's what he ran in Tampa Bay, and he's just stuck to it. Maybe that's when he had success at some point, he stuck to it. But Joey Porter Jr. and Dante Jackson are both man-to-man coverage corners. And Micah Fitzpatrick could cover the middle of the field totally fine, and Deshaun Elliott could keep up with anybody. It doesn't make sense to me not to go man-to-man, and the Steelers love to play zone, and they give up these big plays, and the second one to that is Dak Prescott made a fool of Beanie Bishop last night, and again, I like Beanie's potential, but you are starting to see that he's an undrafted rookie who should not be on the field because, well, he's an undrafted rookie going up against guys like CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott.
Let's go over to James, who says, Noah, this does not look like a playoff team right now. Do you think that after all of the offseason noise, Mike Tomlin ends up on the hot seat?
It's too early to say that. He's not on the hot seat right now. That's for certain. He's not on the hot seat right now. I have a hard time believing the Pittsburgh Steelers would ever fire Mike Tomlin, so I think you're stuck with this for 3 years no matter what. But if the Steelers fall apart this season, if it's over, if you started where you were and they fell apart and all these issues happen, and there are no big massive issues, there are no more big massive issues, but the Steelers still do dumb things like keep George Pickens on the bench and try to run the football with Najee Harris when he just isn't working out, and that the offensive lines are not working out, and you just don't make any adjustments. If the defense looks as good as they should look and they're not nearly as good as they should be, he should be on the hot seat at the end of the season. It should be a situation where you have to talk about it if you're our Rooney. Will they? If I had to guess, no. If I had to guess, Mike Tomlin's got this job for the rest of time until he doesn't want it. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm saying that's how the Steelers think and that's how the Steelers operate. But yeah, right now, Mike Tomlin is an issue. He might be the biggest issue and one that I don't think you address, but somebody's got to have a conversation. Like it sucks because he's the guy that has the conversations with everybody else. Who's the one that's supposed to have the conversations with him? It's Art Rooney, but Art Rooney's not a guy to get involved with these things. He's not a guy to come in and step on his coach's toes. Maybe at some point you have to. Maybe at some point you have to say, Mike, look, I don't know what you're doing wrong and how you can adjust, but you need to adjust because you are a part of the problem, a big one where we stand currently.
Red Hot Chili Peppers fan says the defense seems to be moving slower than in previous weeks. Is everybody confused with the play calling?
Yeah, very confused. The zone defense just makes no sense to me. None. Doesn't make any sense. What are you doing? Why are we starting this? Again, this is a Mike Tomlin thing. Mike Tomlin calls that defense. He's always called that defense. And they love playing zone. They love starting slow. They love giving up early points. They love just putting their backs against the wall. I think Mike Tomlin craves it. I think Mike Tomlin wants to be losing so that he could come back and win. I have no idea. No idea. But Mike Tomlin does not believe in hot starts in an NFL game. And in the last 2 weeks, he has kept that hot start or that slow start almost the entire game because he just refuses to change into a man defense. There were times last night, just like there were times against Indianapolis, but to start out in zone makes no sense, and it should end completely.
Let's go over to Christopher, who says, does this game make the need for Davante Adams even more aggressive?
Yeah, but it certainly does. It certainly does. If you're going to out snap George Pickens with Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin, if Pat Freiermuth's going to be a non-factor right now, if Najee Harris is pretty much absent from the ball game and your quarterback's struggling because he has nobody to throw the football to, yes, you have to go get Davante Adams or you have to go get somebody. The Steelers need to be aggressive right now. I don't care what you have to do. I don't care what the trade has to be. If you're going to trade George Pickens for Davante, great. But you got to make a move because the way that this is situated currently is going to lose you a lot of football games.
Let's go over to Carl Spackler, who says, Noah, forget what the Steelers do. Would you sell what you could now for draft capital and go after Arch Manning in 2026? It means throwing away next year, which they won't, but would you do it?
No, I would not. For one, I don't know if Arch Manning's going to be great. Like everybody's talking about how he's going to be the greatest thing ever. You have no idea. And anything can happen in a whole year. I wouldn't throw away anything. I would make sure I'm not giving up my first round pick this year. I would make sure that, see, it's so tough because in my eyes, I'd build around Justin Fields. If it was up to me, I would build around Justin Fields and I would provide him with a really good offensive line and a better running back and more quality wide receivers. And I would see what he could do. And I'd tell Arthur Smith, if you don't get your shit together, it's over. I would do all those things. I don't know if the Steelers are going to, and because they're not going to, because I believe Russell Wilson will be the starting quarterback sooner rather than later, you probably have to hold on to some draft capital and try to move up in the draft next year to get a quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if the Pittsburgh Steelers moved up to go get a guy like Quinn Ewers or the guy that everybody is down on. But that's where I stand. I wouldn't wait for Archie Manning. I would build around Justin Fields, and if you weren't going to do that, I would get ready to move up in the draft.
Let's go over to James, who said, "No, was it me or did Cam Hayward start to look his age last night? It seemed like his performance was questionable. Too many times I saw 74 and 92 on the line."
I don't know. Yes and no. Yes and no, maybe. The defense was out on the field quite a bit. And I agree, like 92 shouldn't be, but 92 didn't have a bad game. 74, I'd have to go back. I didn't really watch a lot of Dean Lowry when he's out there. I won't lie to you guys. But I do think you are going to load manage him throughout the season, especially in games when your defense is on the field as much as it is. I don't think he's starting to look his age. I think you have to be cautious about it, but I still think a Cam Hayward at 35 who can give you 65% of the snaps is better than most options in the NFL. So I don't think he's starting to show his age. I do think the Steelers are starting to take that into account now that their offense is struggling.
Let's go over to Faceless Man, who says, "Why does it feel like they're playing not to lose with the offensive and defensive play calling? Also, Roman Wilson needs to play."
Roman Wilson does need to play. It's just nuts that he's not playing. I'm not saying he's a fix-all. He probably doesn't do anything to add to this offense. He probably changes very little, but it just doesn't make any sense the way that their thought process at wide receiver is shocking. And I mean, I would love to hear them try to explain it, but they won't. Mike Tomlin will just tell you that you can't tell you the ingredients to the hot dog. You might not like it, and then he'll go out and he'll lose another football game. I mean, they are playing not to lose. That's a Mike Tomlin specialty. He's always played not to lose. It comes back to bite him in the butt in games where, well, he can't play to win, and his teams really aren't built to win. You know, they're just, he doesn't ever, and he puts the mindset in to go win in a 2-minute drill, and that worked last night. It worked. You saw it work. Where it didn't work was when the defense had to go back out there and defend it.
Let's go over to Juro, who says, "What do you guys think about Najee Harris? It looks like he's running with jeans on."
Yeah, Najee Harris. There's two sides to this coin. There's the defenses are 100% looking to shut down Najee Harris because they understand that if they do that, this offense is incredibly limited, and they are going to take advantage of that very limited offense. And I don't blame them. You know, you can't blame them to say, hey, we're just going to run blitz every time Najee's on the field, and we know that you're not going to get the ball out in time because your wide receivers stink. I get it. At the other side of that, there are a lot of good running backs in the NFL that get around this stuff. And Arthur Smith is also trying to get around it. It's not working. You're doing the wrong plays for the wrong guy. Like, Najee Harris should not be taking a pitch ever in his life. But I get the thought process behind a pitch to try to get him into open space, but you don't have the speed to get around the corner, so it's never going to work. I don't think it's a match. I don't think Arthur Smith's offense and Najee Harris are a match, and I think we're starting to see that.
Let's go over to Ryan, who says, "Noah, if you were Con after last night's game, what would you try to do to improve the team? Also, are the Steelers 0-2 since Nick shaved?"
Yeah, they are. I've noticed that too. When it comes to what they should try to improve, you got to go get a wide receiver. You have to go get a wide receiver. And honestly, if your running situation, if Jaylen Warren and Cordell Patterson are out long-term, and I'm talking long-term, another 3-4 weeks plus, you probably try to go get a running back. And don't go get one in a trade, but just go find one somewhere. Go pick one off the streets that is better than Aaron Shaplin and Jonathan Ward, because you need something. You got to get better. If these guys are coming back, great, but you need a wide receiver and you need a running back, and man, do you need them fast.
Let's go over to Vibing with the Dogs, who simply says, Kyle Allen
looked good in 2 snaps last night. I'll say this about Kyle Allen, man. I like and I respect Kyle Allen. He is really good in a vacuum. You give him 10 plays, I bet you he looks good in 8 in them. You give him 17 weeks, I bet you he doesn't look too great by the end of it. So he's a good backup. He's exactly what you're looking for.
Let's go over to Rohan, who says, "Why does the offense feel like it's been the same for 5 years, regardless of who the quarterback is, who the coordinator is, and who the other personnel is?"
There's one constant here, huh? And he's not the offensive coordinator, but he is a coach, and his name's Mike Tomlin. I don't know how much say he has in the offensive play calls. I would imagine it's a pretty significant amount. And If you're going to pinpoint what is the issue, you just look at the pattern, and the pattern is him. I'm not going to say it's all on him. I'm not going to say he is the issue. Maybe he just can't hire an offensive coordinator for squat. Maybe they don't have a good quarterback since Ben left. I don't know. Who knows? But the one constant is Mike Tomlin, and you have to pinpoint that.
Phantom TV says Steelers clearly need Crosby, not Devontae Adams.
Yeah, Max Crosby would play very well, especially after Nick Herbig left with a hamstring injury, and it did not look good. That hamstring injury looked brutal. So I would expect he's going to miss a significant portion of the season here moving forward. You need Alex Highsmith back. I don't know where you go. You do need a Max Crosby, but you also need a Devontae Adams. You probably need them both. If you could pull that off somehow, some way, do it.
Let's go over to Brian, who says, do you think this is Tomlin's first losing season?
Too early to tell. It's too early to tell. You're 3-0 right now. How do you get through the first half of the season? How bad do teams in the second half look? Because teams like the Eagles are hit or miss right now. The Cincinnati Bengals are garbage. The Cleveland Browns might be the worst team in football. The Baltimore Ravens are red hot, but that's the team you want to be red hot if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers out of all three of them. It just, who knows? I think it's way too early to tell right now. 2 losses in a row should not tell you the season's over. It's not over. There needs to be adjustments. There needs to be fixes. I don't have a lot of faith Mike Tomlin's going to fix them, but it's way too. You are still 3-2 and sitting first in the AFC North. So I think that you have an opportunity to still turn this season into something bigger.
Let's go over to DJ Thomas, who simply wants to know, where do the Steelers go from here?
I have no idea. If I had to guess, they go to Russell Wilson. If I had to guess, where do they go from here? They make a quarterback change. They try to make some big drastic change. They get the new quarterback bump, and then we'll see what happens in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks. But I don't know where they go from here. You're probably going to change a quarterback. If it was up to me, you change wide receivers. You tell Broderick Jones to get his stuff together and figure it out, and you somehow coach the mental mistakes out of this unit. If you could do all those things, you improve, but I don't know if they're going to.
Dave wants to mention, let's remember all of these injuries too, just another piece of the losing puzzle. Where do we go from here? Obviously, you just answered. The defense is a really big question.
Defense is a big question. You lose 2 outside linebackers in a defense designed for your pass rush to win. You're hurting. You're struggling. So you got to hope Alex Highsmith comes back. I would imagine week 7 is when they're aiming for him to be back there. If Nick Herbig's out for a significant amount of time, in my eyes, I'm going to get somebody. I'm going to get an outside linebacker somewhere. This is not a season that you could just throw away. That is a key piece to your defense. You have to go get somebody. I think if Herbig's going to miss more than 5-6 weeks, you go get somebody, and you have to quickly.
Let's go to Brian, who says, can Calvin Austin line up as a running back? His speed is pretty good.
His speed's nice. I think he might die if he got hit by some 300-pounders trying to run up the middle while they're running full speed at him. I don't think it's going to work. I like Calvin Austin as just like a gadget guy. They don't use him as a gadget guy nearly enough. I thought Calvin Austin was going to be unleashed in this offense, but it's just another example of how limited they're making things, and it's just not working.
Maybe not as a running back, but maybe a kick returner would actually help.
Yeah, that would be nice, right? You'd think that the guy that runs really fast would be really good at that, huh?
You would think. Let's go over to Caleb, who says, what about the rookie running back out of Georgia, Dajon Edwards?
Yeah, Dajon Edwards is not in Pittsburgh anymore. Hasn't been in Pittsburgh since the summer. I don't know where he is, to be honest. He's not the answer. Let's not try to act like he is. He's not the answer. I think a little bit more Jonathan Ward could help things because of his speed. But I think you just need a real running back. Like, I think you need to go out there and find somebody to be Jaylen Warren or Cordell Patterson alongside Najee Harris. It'll open things up for Najee Harris and allow you to take Najee Harris off the field when he's not getting those holes, when he's not able to gain those yards. So I think you have to make that adjustment. I think you have to go find somebody, depending on how long these injuries are going to last. Dajon Edwards is not it, though.
Let's go to me 24/7 that says, are all of these injuries a lack of conditioning?
No, soft tissue injuries are really tough and they're growing in the NFL. I think it's the speed of the game. It's especially on the defensive side of the ball. Like I've had it explained to me before is as an offensive guy, you're running, you know where your body is going to go next. Your body is already preparing for where it's going to go next. On defense, you're kind of just twitching and moving as the offense twitches and moves. And that's what causes these. It's the speed of the game more than it is conditioning. I mean, the Steelers have been hit with a lot of them. It's like almost a rite of passage that if you don't hurt a soft tissue during the season, you are not a real defender in Pittsburgh. So at least Nick Herbig's real. At least we know that now. I don't know if it's lack of conditioning. They changed conditioning coaches this offseason. Maybe that was the course of action too. And I don't think that they've been hit with as many this year as they typically are. But I don't want to say it's lack of conditioning. It's got to be lack of something when it comes to body maintenance. I don't know if conditioning is it.
Let's finish it off with Carl Spackler today, who says, unpopular opinion. When does any of this blame fall on Rooney? Honestly, since his dad was fully removed from the most of football operations, we have not been the same.
I mean, that comes with the change of times. That comes with everything. I mean, Rooney won 2 Super Bowls, right? Maybe one. I think he won one since it was fully removed. I'm not gonna put any blame on Art Rooney right now. I'm just not. He is an owner that does not get involved. He tries to stay to the side, and that's how I think things should be. That being said, he is the guy that continues to put his faith in Mike Tomlin. I think that's justified a lot of the time. Right now, it's not justified. After last season, it's not justified. So 3 years on his contract, you could put that on Rooney. Should have been 1, or it should have just been, let it rock out, let it ride this last season into 2025, and then you make a decision there. I think that one's on Rooney, but the rest of it, all these struggles, I don't think Rooney's got a ton of say in it. I don't think he wants a ton of say in it. And I personally, in my opinion, think that's how a football team should be run.
Yep. Before we go really quickly, Phantom says the interior of the O-line looked good.
The interior of the offensive line does look good. I mean, it's Broderick. Broderick's the issue. Right now, Broderick's the issue. He's playing the worst football he's played since he's been in the NFL. I get it. It's a small sample size, but you got to play better. I don't know how you fix it. There was a reason Troy Fautanu was going to be the starter and Broderick was supposed to learn and develop for a year. I don't know how you go about it, but you have to soon. That's for certain. Like, you have to fix Broderick Jones. I don't know if you could, but you got to try.
That's a wrap for today then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow to recap Tomlin Tuesday, go over our overreaction Tuesdays, week 2 of that segment. Very excited for it, and answer all of your questions as we do every day. With that said, I know it's not a Victory Monday, but it's still a good one in the Berg. So make sure you enjoy it. Peace.